Geez, you can't find the start button this time.
Put another quarter in.
Come on, Jody. God dang it. Must have got a call. My light crapped out, so I got my cell phone turned backwards with the freaking flashlight on, just blinding me.
You should have just got another light bulb.
I changed light bulb. It's not actually the bulb, it's the whole goddamn thing.
Cool.
Are we live and we don't know it?
I don't think so. Jody's doing something in the background. I know it. Pretty sure there's blonde hair flying everywhere.
She's screaming, ah!
Oh, that's funny. Oh, there we go. We're live. It's Jody. Hey, monkeys, go. Like we're a chicken on a hot plate. Welcome, everyone, to Let's Talk Chuckwagons. That was easy to say. Brought to you by LimeLite Audio and Media, along with Cinch, Oilfield, Hauling. And Ray, first and foremost, congratulations to you and Ashley.
Thank you.
I hear it was a fabulous time, and I'm sure our guest tonight is going to have some fabulous wedding advice for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to listen up for this one for sure. No, it was a great weekend. We had a lot of friends and family. Obviously, COVID, scared a few people away, but the people that were there to have a lot of fun. So, and that's what we did.
Well, that's good. Now, like we start every show, I want to do it again because I think it's only fitting after your wedding day that we go to Story Time with Ray, brought to you by our friends at Highwood Distillers. A big thank you to them. And what do you got for us this week, Ray?
Oh, I can't even remember the year. I was 14, I think. Anyways, Jim, Nevada, and I know Caffrop was there. Eddie Melville was there, and I was new to anybody kind of on the world side of things, but there was me and Pete Balash from Bonneville. Dad paid for us to go to this outriding school, so we went down to Hobima, and there was I think a 2-day outriding school there. So that was my introduction to Jim, and sitting back behind the barns with some of the WPCA guys, and learning their vision or how to jump on and how they did it over there, and got schooled up, and then come back and started my outriding career. So that would be, I think, spring of '96, if I'm correct.
Were things any difference between the way you did it in the CPCA and the way they did it in the WPCA? Because they were kind of how could you say, a bit of a tough crew that outrode back in the WPCA then.
Yeah. No, I think technique wise and style was, there's only kind of one or two ways to get on, and it was just more trying to attract new outriders to the sport to kind of maintain the level of participation we needed for each association. And back then we were running 4 outriders, so you needed kind of new guys every year, right? So there's been lots of guys over the years put on riding schools. Ben's Millers did lots in Dewberry every year, and the kicker, I guess, for the guys that do put them on is they get their old horses schooled, and then they get some new ones broke, and then they'll make a little bit of money off it. And it's a bit of a commitment when it comes to having 8 or 10 kids out there, and making sure you spend enough time with them and teaching them how to gallop, and kind of separating them on their skill levels, and hopefully all of them can catch on. But for the most part, there's usually 20 or 25% that'll carry on. A lot of them either can't go to all the races or don't have the commitment to do it, but they want to try first off, so they go to one of these schools.
Okay, perfect. Now we do have a guest, but I can see the bottom of the screen because Jody gave me permission. That Jim must have been having some technical difficulties, so he'll be back soon. And I'm pretty excited when he comes back. Jim Nevada is quite. Would be fair to call him a character of Chuckwagon racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a voice that, wasn't scared to be heard. And there was quite a few instances where me and him were on the same page, whether we had planned it or talked about it, but we made sure that certain parties or committees were well aware of our feelings. And, we tried to always stand up for the guys as a whole, especially, the wagon drivers, and tried to have a little more foundation and support for them. And we got in trouble for it at times. Got our pee slapped. It. Yeah, once in a while.
I can't imagine you two getting into trouble there. That just doesn't seem like it would go hand in hand with anything.
Well, you get stuck in kangaroo court once in a while, and your passion for the sport sometimes take over, and your passion most times is supports what's right, and maybe not in their eyes, but it's right for the sport and right for your drivers. And I know, every driver is basically my competition, but I never looked at it that way when I was off the track. When I was on the track, I'm there to beat you, I'm there to race against you, but for the most part, it was always trying to be, for the guys and the betterment of the sport, and just keep it growing, right? So a lot of things that we complained about back in the day and or brought to fruition to some of these committees basically has happened, and they had no interest in listening at the time, and now here we are. They're tripping over the stones that we laid down for them.
Well, let's bring him in. Jim Nevada, welcome. You disappeared for a minute there. I know. Oh, you're back in the truck. I see what happened. Are you in the tractor or the truck?
I got out of the tractor and then I went to the office. We built new offices in containers, and sometimes it don't work. So I had to run out, and now I'm sitting in the truck.
You're not the first one. Don't worry. Not the last.
No. I think we've all done this show from the truck a time or two. It's that's just a rite of passage more than anything. Ray was telling us a little bit about when he went to your outriding school, and heck, you trained a lot of outriders in your day, Jim. Along with what you're driving, and tell us a little bit about kind of starting some of those young guys in the outriding world.
Well, some of them were good. Ray was good. There was quite a few that you had to inform that they weren't, and they had a little background with them. I don't know. I think one of the funniest one was Cease, Neil Walgenbach's brother. He couldn't jump on a stick, so we had him jumping on a fence because we didn't want to hurt a horse. We had. That was fun. That was back in the Dallas Dorchester time. Back then when wagon racing was fun, and you could say things without offending somebody. So I don't know. I miss those days. I think we had that school, I don't know, for a few years there. And then it kind of went up north with Dale Gray and that crew, and he did a great job. So, yeah, I miss that crew.
You're not in your man cave, are you now? Is that where you are, in the man cave?
I'm back to the house, and I'm looking at the cows that just broke through a fence. So if you're wondering what to do, 60 cows that just came through a fence into what I just finished baling. So we got a lot to eat in.
Now, you are truly one of the colorful characters. You're a driver, an outrider, an announcer. You've done radio. You're in business. What would be the highlight of Jim Nevada's Chuckwagon career?
I think the highlight of just one sec, guys. The highlight of my career was the people. I didn't win much as a driver. Let me just find a good spot here. There we go.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I didn't win much as a driver. A few wins. I started a little lower on the racetrack than other drivers. I didn't have a family. Like Ray was lucky, he had his dad and his grandpa. I had to outride to make my way around the racetrack, and I did it, but took a little longer than most. But I was a good outrider, and I miss riding with Randy Robinson, Randy Armstrong, Vegan, Lyle. Like when I started, I think we were the cream of the crop, the best guys and the most. We rode good. We rode together. So I miss that part. That was my highlight in my career. Was we rode with the best group of outriders, not the best outriders. We were the best, but I don't mean to brag, but we had fun.
A little more cowboy back then too, right? You guys could, you know, you just got things done. And like I even said that to people. I maybe wasn't the best or the smoothest, but I was strong and I could get horses handled and get things done, where some other kids that were, you know, a lot prettier to watch or you know, fit the jockey mold, they couldn't handle a bad horse, right? So
yeah, I don't know. That early 80s, we could ride the hair off anything, and there was probably 14 of us that could get the job done, and that's what was cool.
Who was your, I guess, your mentor or your favorite person to ride for when you did outride?
I think Dallas Dorchester was the one that first hauled me aside. Richard Cosgrave. Richard always gave me shit because I would do something real, I don't know. I was always a rebel like Ray. Richard was cool. Dallas was great to me. He was like family. And then when we lost Richard, and then Dallas retired, just after that, everything kind of just went a little south. It wasn't the fun like we used to have.
Changed, eh? Who had who back in your day when you rode for somebody, who was like your go-to, the guy that you knew you're gonna be in the money or was always gonna be right there?
It was always Dallas. I rode with Kelly and we won 3 or 4 stampedes. There was a group, Kelly, Ralph, and Kirk. They hired me on, and that was the first big bucks. But as a friend, I always rode for Dallas first. Richard, before he got killed, there was me and Norm and a few other guys. But the go-to guy was always Dallas. When he died or retired, before he died, sorry. I don't know. I won 2 Calgarys with Dallas, and I don't know. I got 12 Calgarys as an outrider, 12 or 14 with the aggregates. So all those ones were special. But I rode with Mikey and guys that you know, it was like working cows. You knew what somebody was going to do. You didn't have to say get the black cow or bring out that. So I don't know. Those were the best years. The 4 outriding years were the best years.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was young when they kind of all went away. So in my early 20s, it all went away. But I don't know. It was just exciting, and we got to do it actually at the NACC championship here in Lloydminster this summer. And there were some old boys, and we had quite the chuckle, you know, and just fun with it, right? So, and there's lots of young kids that I was saying, you guys should be out here with us, mix a couple in and get to experience, but they all just wanted to watch. I don't know if they were scared or if they just wanted to see how it was done or what, but that was a lot of fun.
You should have got Jim out there.
Oh, you could still do it easy. Everybody's got one more jump left.
Me and Rio were going to do it in Calgary. If we went another year there, we're going to go do the demo. But the 4 outriding years were the best years.
like to work with somebody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
I'm getting old. I can't hear you guys great, but the 4-out riding years is when you learn to work with somebody. We had Lyle Pambram in the back with the Kelly's outfit, and he used to pick on guys, and it was hard to believe you're on the same team. Love Lyle to death, but man, when riding with him sometimes, he didn't think you were on this. Me, he was always good with, but if you brought someone young in there, he was a prick. But
was he the toughest outrider ever to walk the face of the earth?
when Lyle was young, he could ride anything, and he'd had one spur on, and you could give him anything. If they asked me who was the best outrider, for some that had a little, Lyle Pambram was the best. You know, I was good on pegs. On the old stove days, no, I was terrible. But then I'd look beside me and it'd be Randy Armstrong. Well, Randy Armstrong didn't look like he could lift a milk carton, and he could load those old stoves. I tried it twice, and both times they were left behind. But you put me and Shields or me and Dale Gray on a peg, they were loaded, and a lot of times we hit the driver in the back. You put Mike Vegan, Randy Robinson was probably the best lead man ever. One of the top one was Jerry Bremner. You drive your outfit into Jerry Bremner, those horses didn't move. Jerry was unbelievable, but there was probably 16 of us that you could call, and we got the job done. Grant Wosley was unbelievable on the stove, but you had to give him room to the top. Like real cool characters, like Wosley, all you heard going to the top barrels, give me your arm, give me your arm, give me your arm, give me your arm. He got on, and then you could do your job. But Dale Gray, me, Shields, Pegman, we loaded. But those days are done.
Yeah, those days have gone by. What's one of, I guess, the most interesting stories you have from the racetrack, whether you're in a race or on the radio or calling or whatever you're doing, that time that just sticks out in your mind, you go, you know what, I'm never going to see that again?
You know, there's probably 50 of them. When you ask that question, you know, everything from going down the road back then to riding. Like, I remember my teeth were blown out of my head in Grand Prairie. I still got on my horse. I rode. Everyone was trying to stop my horse. I still made it. Back, Mindy Shingus was out riding that heat. It was that long ago. And I had a fracture from my eye socket down to where my teeth used to be. We still rode. We still bailed on. I got hit in the side at a cracked leg. They said it was cracked. It felt a little more than that. But back then we were cowboys. We rode. We went to the next show. But I miss the riding was the riding, and we rode. But the traveling with your buddies like Randy Armstrong and Randy Robinson and Mike Vegan and that bunch, and the funny stories were when you're on the road, and the stuff we used to do that you'd probably be in jail for right now. But
there's
them
no
are the years
camera
I
phones
missed.
to catch you either.
What?
I said there's no camera phones back then to catch you either.
Well, we used, and this might be wrong to say, but back then when you outride, you pick somebody up, you picked up a couple boxes of beer, and you hit the road. And you, whether you're going to Grand Prairie or whatever, you know, hey, yeah, back in the early 80s or late 70s, well, literally late 80s, you'd pick up a box of beer, you'd drive by, pick up your friend or two or three, and then you'd make your way to Grand Prairie. And man, you can't write a book on it anymore. You defend somebody, but we were drinking and driving, and we were heading to the next rodeo. And we were all just young outriders back then, and chewing Copenhagen and drinking beer and heading to the rodeo.
Now, you went from outriding into the driving box, and that had to be a big adjustment, especially like you said earlier on. You didn't have that family initiative that was part of it. This was a solo mission pretty well.
When I first started driving, I bought a bunch of horses, or guys owed me money for outriding. And I still have the book. I was going through it the other day. I wrote down everyone I rode for, Wet Heat, Morris, wherever we were, and how much it was, $10 or $15 back then. So, and then some guys would sell me a horse, and then back in, I think it was 84, I had enough horses to drive. They weren't much to drive. Most of them we had to push with the lines. They were all pigs. So that's when I first, to drive, I wasn't scared to drive. Like, there was nothing on the end of the lines. Like, it was terrible. But I don't know. It took me, I didn't even have a liner, so I'd outride, and this Roy Shikarowski would hold 2 horses, Ronnie David would hold 1 horse, Rupert Fisher on, and then I'd get to the show, and then I'd get all my horses together. Like, that's how bad it was. A lot of people don't know this, but Norm Cuthbertson, he started driving, so you take 3. Then I'd have to find a liner to tie my horses to. It was that's how weird it was when I started. Like, but you didn't need 40 head of horses back then. You needed 7 or 8, and then you'd borrow everything else. So I didn't have a liner for 2 years, but I would outride for this guy. I'd outride for Schicker. I'd outride for Ronnie David. That's how I got down the road. Now you couldn't do what I did, but and I had to outride so many heats for about 7 or 8 years of my career, so that I could go down the road and call myself a Chuckwagon. No, I was terrible. I had a harness. I borrowed a wagon for the first 3 years of my career. And then 87, I bought some horses off Norm, and then I started popping. So it was 3 years, and then I qualified for my first Calgary at 87. I didn't own a liner till 89. So everything I had, I was a gypsy. I would borrow this, that, or outright for somebody. And then I finally made it to Calgary, and I sold same as Dallas Dorchester in 88 at the Olympic year. And I sold for $15,000 at the Calgary Stampede. But that year I still didn't have a liner, or I didn't even have a class 1. So my story is a little different. I was walking down the side of the road with 7 horses leading. So it was a little haywire.
You were rustic.
I think it's a great story because you had a career. It just all goes back to determination and commitment, right? And you found a way, and you had friends that, like the Chuckwagon committee or the community, they banded together and, put up with you and helped you get down the road and enjoyed, supporting you and, you riding for them. And I understand when there's a good outrider out there and you can do something to secure him, or, he's going to ride for you, whether it's packing a horse or, you know what I mean? You throw a little fuel at him or something like that nowadays, and you can sign a guy like that to stick with you. But I want to circle back. You had mentioned kind of outriding fees and what you used to get paid, and I just kind of chuckled. And it's obviously inflation, right, from the 80s to now. But where did you start? How much did you get paid? And then kind of when did it really take off and you started to see the money come flowing?
When we won it was 10 or 15. I'd like to run up and grab the book right now. I don't know, but like the first year outright with WPCA didn't exist, so we were still CPRA. Yeah. And Mom wouldn't sign my, I was underage, right? So Mom wouldn't sign my release form or get out of jail free card. I actually finished second the first year outroad in the CPRA or whatever it was called. And I came home with $700 had over $7,000 in the bank. And
What year was that?
then they had Cheyenne and all that stuff. So I would go to Morris, Swan River, and Mom never knew where I was. I was 15 years old. Made it Morris, Swan River, this, that. But it was all on 10 or 15 bucks. So and I finished second in the Outrider standings, but I didn't have my mother's signature. So they acknowledge I finished second in the world, or whatever you wanted to call it, and they give me $100 fine for not having my mother's signature. So that was kind of funny.
That's like 10 rides.
Huh?
That's like 10 rides, that fine. Holy Christ.
Yeah, it was a big fine, but I come home and I had all this money and all these checks back then. Like I had checks like this. Think when I went to the bank. That was cool. And then Kelly was the one that came up to me. Dallas, I was always fair. I never asked what I got paid when I outrode. I always asked, I just wrote. And if I didn't like you, I didn't ride for it. And then Kelly was the one, I think I was one of the first guys to get offered like $200 a ride. And I rode for Kelly, and we won with Ralph. And then Kelly went fishing. Rode for Ralph, Kelly, Kirk back then. It was all the same crew. And then we won. The last time I rode for Kelly I was on the board then, and we had to take, he did something that wasn't honest, so we had to go to the board. And then the last time I rode for Kelly, I never got paid for the whole 10 days of Stampede. We won it. So all I got was a buckle and a go screw yourself thing from Kelly Sutherland.
Yeah.
I didn't care. We went Calgary, and me and Mike. Wow, now, yeah, I don't know. I went from $10 to $200. I think I was one of the, probably Dale Gray and me and a few others were the top guys that got the big bucks the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But I 10 years of my driving career was a total waste of time, but I did it. Walking down the road with 10 horses, but I do miss the outriding and that camaraderie back in the 80s and early 90s. But and the schools, that was fun.
When you were driving, how tough were you on your outriders, knowing that you probably could have done it if they messed up?
I didn't have to be tough with any of my outriders, because my outriders were Jerry Bremner, which would have kicked the shit out of me if I was tough with him. I had Norm, I had Randy Robinson, and for a good-hearted guy he would have killed me too. Mike Vegan, you couldn't be hard on your outriders back then. You'd been laying on a pile on the ground if you were, because they were the best back then, and we were all friends. So I remember the first year in Calgary, Mike Vegan got a couple outrider interference, but you couldn't say nothing to Mike Vegan because he'd have jumped up in a chair and hit you, right? So what do you do?
And he was probably madder than anybody on the grounds about it, or at the judges or whatever, right? So those guys that are the best, they take it to heart, and then they don't usually fuck up for the rest of the year. But
no, we didn't. We had good horses back, a lot of good horses. The early heats was the shit show, which was fun. We had a couple horses there that everybody bet they could handle them, and Honky, I remember this one horse, he left everybody either stuck in a wheel team or in a fence, or I don't know. We all laugh about it now, but it's funny how you remember those old horses like Thyrus and Dallas had some Muddy Harp. You remember those horses, but you ask somebody's name, you can't remember shit. But those good horses, you can remember them.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's just like Eddie Melville. Eddie came on with us, and just like you, he remembers those good horses, and he says you'll never forget them.
Yeah, but Eddie was still, I don't know, back in the the 80s and 90s and the 4 Outriders, nobody's ever going to live that again in the way Calgary keeps screwing up things. So Eddie was still after like Eddie worked for me. He had to be 10, 15 years behind the good stuff. 10 probably. But he sat on the fence and he seen it all because he was with me and Orville and his brother. But I don't mean to brag, but I was looking at the pictures and the best years when I started. Greenwood was riding, Mindy Shingus, Dallas, even Doyle Mullaney was out riding back then. Ronnie David, Richard Cosgrave, like I'm old, and those were those guys had the funniest stories, the most, and I was just a little kid, like when Ray was probably looking up to our outriding school, but Ray, how old were you when you started at the school? 15, 16?
I think I was 14 actually.
Yeah. So
I got to see some of the guys that Jim mentions ride. But it was way before I even started. It was probably 3-4 years before. But yeah, they were truly the best outriders that pretty much walked the face of the earth. There's been some real good ones, but not as tough a groups as these guys.
Well, the key word is group.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't think anyone was better than anyone, and then some guy might walk around think he was the best. When no one was the best. There was so many guys that were good at certain positions and good as a team back then. So if somebody walked around 5 world champions, I didn't give a shit. Like, we were all that good. Someone was just lucky with the points.
Yeah.
And there was over 10 of us that you could call world champions, So what, I won 14 Stampedes or whatever the hell's on the wall there. I wouldn't give that up for any day riding. If I could ride with Randy Robinson and Randy Armstrong and Mike again, I'd give all that crap up on the wall just to Kenny McMillan. There's another blind guy that, we had fun. So what, you walked away with the buckle. We were a good crew.
You can only wear one at a time. The rest of them just collect dust.
Well, they're all in Kim's linen closet, and I didn't even know where all the buckles were. I don't have a lot of Chuckwagon buckles, but I do have a lot of really good outriding buckles with stories.
Yeah, and that's it. Now, since your Chuckwagon driving and outriding career passed, you got into the business end of, I'm going to say, the Western world and been quite successful with that. How does someone get into that the way that you did?
Well, what happened with me, and it's kind of weird, and if anyone knows me, my squirrel cage gets going, and it's like cowboy Tourette's, right? So what happened with me is they were looking for stuff to market the WPCA back in, I forget what year, back when we had Lethbridge High River. So I found out there was a company called Roper, and there was Wrangler. I was a Wrangler in Dorsey back then. And they needed shirts for all the sponsors and all this and that. So I got to meet this guy, and I found out about shirts. And I didn't know a twill from a polycotton from a poplin or whatever. So there was a warehouse in Calgary, and all these sponsors needed shirts, and they wanted to wear them down to the Stampede and say, Joe's Welding or J&L Supply. I found out about Roper in their warehouse, and I found out they had about 10,000 shirts, all different colors. So I went in there and I met this guy, and I started selling shirts to all these sponsors. And I was supposed to be marketing the WPCA, which I did. I did coats and hats and all that. I worked for Bill Hollow at Tuckett Stormfront Promotion. And then I learned the industry. Well, I never worked at it at all. I just knew so many people. But I found out about this warehouse. First year I sold like 6,500 shirts and to all these different sponsors. And then I went with this other guy that did T-shirts with, what was his name? Elton. Anyways, I sold 10,000 T-shirts with all these different logos on them. And then I turned around and I did it again and I did it bigger. And we sold T-shirts, cups, hats, all this. So I was working for Stormfront, and then Roper Apparel approached me and they said they flew me down to Denver. And the guy I was selling the stuff through, he was winning all these awards for top sales and Cowboy Code and blah, blah, blah. And he got drunk one night down in Denver and he told everybody about this young kid that was selling all these shirts. And I don't do nothing. He said he got 80 some games of golf in. So he got drunk, told everybody who I was, and they invited me down there. And then I started off. I got to Denver and they said, you got the second biggest block of business without a territory. Like, you're not selling Alberta, you're selling all of Canada. So they hired me for a corporate rep. And then they got rid of the guy that was getting 87 games of golf in. And then they said, you got Alberta. And then 4 years later, they said, would you take over Canada? So it was good. They didn't have HR back then, so I got hired. So the things I would say, they would always warn me that you can't really say that, Jimmy, but I was making them so much money, and then I was in charge of all Canada, and then they just let me give her. And I've been there 20 years now. And that's why I quit wagon racing too. I went to work for a company I seen a future in, and that I get paid in US funds. So that was another big plus. So then I went to the apparel industry, and I don't know, we've never looked back.
No, it's been great. I know I've been in to see you on occasion, and we've had a few laughs, and it's always good to see what you're up to, because you're never quite sure what's going to come out of Jim Nevada's mouth.
Well, yeah, you got a pretty wicked. Anything you've ever been involved in, you just started from the ground up and battled your way through it, and then I don't know. I like these kind of stories, so I didn't really know the Roper story or really your early career in the wagons, and gives a bigger meaning to your career and a little bit more value to me, anyways, as a fan and a spectator growing up watching you guys.
Yeah, mine, I put my money where my mouth was, and that's the funny thing about Denver. They were always nervous of me, but the president of the company, Kerry Valstein, he seen something in me that other people would have been scared of. And he says, one thing, I don't worry about you, Jim. Sometimes I worry about what you say, but I'd write a check for $35,000 saying we're doing this. And he said, don't even phone me, just do it. If you think it's right and you got the gut, go. And that was the coolest thing about Roper, was the president with, I'm a little out there, but he always backed me. And I'm not kidding. I would who would write a check for $35,000 saying we're doing this, we're renting this warehouse, we're doing this. And I didn't have the okay or anything. And then the one funny one was the owner of the company. He came in to carry my bosses. He says, who's this Canadian? He just wrote a PO for 12,000 shirts and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And Kerry looked at Gary Mandelbaum and said, well, if you dumbass, if you look further, you'd see you already sold out of 12,000. So get that out of my office. So that was the kind of relationship we had with Roper. If it was a real great Poupon company, I wouldn't have lasted 10 seconds, but my boss talks like me, and he'll phone me up and scream at me. I'll put him on speakerphone through the whole warehouse. It's funnier than shit. But 10 minutes later, we sit and have a beer together.
Yeah.
But that's the cool thing about Roper.
Oh, that's great. And I mean, great company, great product. So get your Roper apparel from Jimmy, Nevada. Two things that Ray and I talked about before we went on, and I'll touch on the first one. I'll let him touch on the second one. What direction do you see Chuckwagons going 2021, 2022?
I don't know what you guys don't know. I probably know a little more than most drivers. Right now, there's a battle going on, and on both sides, the drivers, also the sponsorship. So now I'm on the sponsorship side. With the tarp sale and all this other bullshit going on, we've met with apparel companies that sponsor. Calgary's always been the ones that tell you how it's going to be. Right now, there's a change, and there is a battle going on right now. A lot of people don't know it. I wish somebody would post what's going on, but you cannot ask, especially in Calgary, for the same sponsorship. You cannot ask what Calgary's asking for. And if they're going to the format that was set 3 years ago, which people don't know, was not agreed by the drivers. So this bullshit with 3 wagons to 8 and 27, it was never agreed on. What Calgary does to people is they lead you in there, and they have a meeting, and it sounds like you're both in agreement about it, but the format from 3 years ago, pre-COVID, was not agreed by the driver director and the director of the WPCA. And then they left the CPCA out, which it was a total crock of shit. But to figure out who was leading that direction of the Calgary Stampede, you had, I always say his name wrong, Keegan Vine or whatever his name is, and then Wise. But somebody above him, whether it was Rosenberg or who, was leading that direction for the Calgary Stampede. But it was never agreed. This is the way it is. You come to Calgary, take it or leave it. After the shit show that happened in High River and what's shown, the drivers have come back and said, no, you know what? We're not going with this. So right now there's a new guy out of the States running everything, and they bypassed Keegan's gone. And so, or what's his name still there? Wise or Weeze or whatever the hell his name is. So, and then the sponsors are going, you want this much money out of us, then we want the evening show. Calgary's a rodeo, but when you go, I've been to the Middle East and Australia and whatever, it always comes back, they want to see the chucks. So until these people in Calgary realize that this year, until they follow that, it's rodeo. You can go to NFR, Houston, whatever. You can have a rodeo. But Canada is known for this one sport called chuckwagon racing. And nobody does it better than us, looks better than us, it's more professional than us, than Calgary. So the problem with the board of directors, when you look at half of that group, half of them just cut the whistle off their cowboy hat. You look at them and it's the who's who, and they go for their suppers and that. But if you meet these people, they wouldn't know a thoroughbred from a donkey. They wouldn't know like the ag department. That one guy, I met him and I run 100 head of cows. He wouldn't know a Holstein from a Hereford. And then these are the people in charge, and everybody's so trying to make everything perfect. When you have animals get hurt or injured. It's like football players. And me and Ray talked about this a while ago, but the direction of Calgary now will be decided within a week before the invites go out. And it looks like we're probably going to go back to the 70s where we take a year off again and go down to High River is what might happen. But the thing is, if they don't, there won't be a chuck wagon racing. It'll be a demo sport where they can advertise the Stampede. It won't be a competitive sport. Like when you don't invite drivers, it's a sport. And if you look on the people and you read their descriptions and who they are at the Calgary Stampede, you just got to be a bunch of wannabes in there. So I hope it goes the other way. The sponsors are mad. There's a lot of sponsors that said head to High River and screw those guys. But I don't know with that new guy in there, and he run the Houston Livestock Show. But the weird thing about it, and I've been really working on this for the last couple months, trying to figure out who's the push for this bullshit. And it stopped it. They would only meet with two guys, and that was Keegan and Wise or whatever his name is. Rosenberg wouldn't take a part of the meeting. They would answer to Rosenberg and it'd come down. So somebody up above is calling the shots on wagon racing, and everybody's trying to figure out right now who that is. And they don't know if it's coming. They don't know if their message is going up to the directors, or they don't know if it's stopping at a certain person. But Rosenberg's out. So the WPCA sent a message that they didn't agree with the format and they wanted to meet, and it looks like now they're going to meet in the next week or so.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, Chuckwagon racing needs to be competitive. It can't be something that's just a show.
Yeah, I think any of the invites, regardless if it was a Chuckwagon race or rodeo, it's actually done the opposite of what they wanted, and it's dampened the sport. It's taken away opportunity from people. And there's years in the 80s where somebody won the steer wrestling and you're like, well, who is this guy? And nobody knows him. Nobody knows his name, but he come in and won it, won 50 grand. And then him and 4 of his buddies continued rodeoing for the next 10 years because they had opportunity, and now they choose to have all these invite rodeos, and it's just kind of the old boys club. And until you're, $1 million cowboy or whatever you want to call it, you don't get to go to some of these rodeos, and that's taking away opportunity, right? So one thing with Canada and US is usually freedom and opportunity is first and foremost. But I hope they go back to the old format where you actually have to qualify through your association, because it adds so much value to the association and the rules and all the bylaws and everything that we have to follow there. And just strengthens the sport as a whole, right? Instead of going down through the list of people and picking who you like and picking who sent you a nice letter that fall, and somebody that had a good sponsor that maybe sent in a letter, and versus just following the qualifications, right? So, there's years where the Oilers were shitty and you didn't see them making the playoffs because they're all nice guys. Like, they just didn't get to go. Either you make it and you go to the playoffs, or you don't make it and you stay home.
Yeah.
Well, you need something to strive for. Like the Turney boy there, like when I was, all I got to do is beat Mel Hodzi and whatever, and there's so many spots, and that's what I strive for, and that's what I did. But if you're going to spend $200,000 in liners, horses, and this, and your direction is to, I got to kiss ass. Like, why would you do that unless you're a good ass kisser? But who in their right mind would put the money and the time in now and not know, the direction he could get to without a qualification? So that's the stupid thing is some of these kids have put years into it like I did, and they would have. I remember Risdale would have qualified for Calgary, and they took Jim Knight like 10 years ago. Jim Knight had to go to the runoff. I like Jim Knight. I outrode for Jim Knight. But I thought, this is the biggest crock ever. You invite Jim Knight to the Calgary Stampede. Nothing against you, Jim, if you're listening. But he didn't deserve to be there. Risdale deserved to be there. There was a few other younger guys. that should have qualified. And they invited him because he was more marketable. Well, he had a terrible Stampede, but the people making the calls at the Calgary Stampede aren't qualified to make the calls. And then Keegan Vine and the rest of that coconut crew in there, what they seen this year, like I posted that thing on the company website. I had 4,300 shares in 3 days about support the wagon, support this. So if they're not smart enough to see that, and if we're not smart enough to use social media to beat them up, we're not doing the right job. Like we got to tell, shit, back in the 90s or when was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? We were on 3 television stations and people could get off their horse and watch your heat, like 2 and 7, 4 and 5 Shaw. And they put Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on instead of us. And within 2 days, Toronto switched it back that there was so much uproar. People wanted to watch their wagons. And we outdid Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Regis and all that bull. But we were popular. And the way Calgary's gone is they sold their soul to CBC. So you get to watch 3 heats in Tommy Glass. Yippee-yi-yay. People would turn that off and listen to our radio station because me and Crowder were on making fun of people having in Rio. But people would actually say, yeah, we got the TV on. They turned the sound off. We're listening to you guys. Like our radio program. And I'm not bragging. We were funny. Or we tried to be funny.
But, well, I think it's because you guys would just say it the way it is. There was no made for TV. If it wasn't right, you guys were going to say it.
Well, and we had a good crew there. Ray would be the serious guy, and then me and Rio would come on, and we were like Laurel and Hardy. We were making Greg Buchanan sweat like a fat boy. Well, he is fat. But, man, that was a fun show. And then, like, the amount of people, and then when we got on to that one, FM station, it covered all Western Canada, people like you or hate you. And with me, I didn't give a shit. I can swear, I can say shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nobody gave a shit. And some people don't like me. I don't care. I wasn't born to get a brown nose, and when we added Ray and we switched off the days, like that was the best program going according to the feedback we got. And Greg was just a glorified babysitter with the shit show we did.
Keeping us in bounds as much as he could or bringing us back in bounds.
No, you just feed him a burger and he'd shut up. But I really miss that because, there are a few nights I wouldn't go on and I'd sit back and watch Ray work. And Ray's way more professional than me. And then here come the shit show, me and Rio, and we'd feed off each other. Like it was people wanted to hear the good stories again.
Yeah.
And that was the fun thing. But you know what? It's all gone now. Now you can't say this or that, or you're racist, or you're making fun of this group, or no, we're having fun, and that's one thing I will miss in Calgary. They're off eating their great poupon or whatever they're doing. They didn't realize what they had, but they will if they lose it.
Yeah. Yeah. If it goes away one more year, I think they know, statistically what was there and not there, whether they really want to admit it, because I know they published other things. But when you're watching, the finals on a Sunday at the Calgary Stampede and they don't pan to the grandstand, that's because there's nobody in the grandstand. And, there was rumors, or I don't know if it was true or not, but it was free admission to go to the finals. Well, I've never heard of that at the Calgary Stampede, right? Usually it's $200-$300 tickets to get good tickets. And, the wagons themselves, they were probably 85% full for the first 3 days. And then after that, they were, 110% full. And the rodeo never did, fill up till the last 4 days usually. And, as much as we kind of beat them up and we're trying to corner them a little bit and make them, get us back there. We all loved love that show and still miss it, right? So, but it's pretty impressive to see, you know, a group of drivers finally kind of band together and you know, admit to one another that, you know, they need to put their foot down and stick up for what's right in the sport and you know, try to pursue that, right? And then if it doesn't go down that road, there's opportunity for, you know, a High River or Panoka or you know, different shows to step up and up their game. And, you know, it'll obviously never be the same, but it's hopefully just they kind of snap out of it and they want their wagons back at Stampede.
Well, the key thing is who's calling the shots there. And I've been, you know me, I've been trying to figure out who is calling this in what direction. I know a few directors now, and they wouldn't come in with 100. Somebody's calling the shots in there to do this, but they don't have the kahunas to stand up and say they're giving that direction. So they send in their two little pawns to give that direction. But there's now the new guy's in, and he doesn't. The sad thing that scares me about him is he don't know a chuck wagon or from anything. They run ponies down there. But there's somebody above those two people giving the direction that's pushing Calgary to be this way. And that person's got to come out. And I don't think that person's got the kahunas because he'll get roasted like he's Trudeau downtown Calgary. So that's what I'm trying to figure out who's giving these two pawns this direction. And he don't have the balls to come out. He don't have the balls to come to the meetings. He's got a direction. He gives it there. And then he goes back to the board of directors. If you guys Google, which I have, trying to figure out which one in that group there, and half of them are lawyers and accountants. They've never owned a horse, let alone petted one. So if the pressure gets back to these directors, what they're going to lose, then it's good. But there's a gap missing in between the two pawns, the new manager, and the directors. So when it comes out who this guy is, I'll tell you, I'll be in his goddamn face and there'll be a shit show going on. But there is a pea-hearted son of a bitch there that's going to screw this up. But he's not brave enough to stick his head out of the gopher hole, because I'll be there with a 22, because I haven't figured it out, and I will figure it out. I'm pretty aggressive. So next week, the WP, they're supposed to meet before the invites go out. But I just want one of those guys to stick up and say, I'll say it, but he will be roasted. Like this whole Western Canada will let him have it, but there's nobody brave enough there who's calling this to do it. So when that day comes, it's going to be his worst day. But
we'll all know. Well, you know what we'll have to do in a short time here. We'll have to circle back, and maybe we'll get you and Norm and Jerry and a group of you guys on. We'll just sit back and let you guys tell the stories and kind of the way it is and the way it should be.
Yeah, we're having a big golf tournament during Panoka and a 80s Outrider reunion. So anybody that's that old and still alive, come to Panoka. It should be good because it's going to be hosted by Bremner. Then we're going to go out to the Dorchester Golf Course, and half of us, I don't know. I'm looking really forward to it.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna cut her short tonight, guys. Jimmy, I appreciate this. You're always, you know what? You're never shy for words. You're always great for stories, and I'll pop in and see you here one day. Ray, thanks a bunch once again. What an awesome time. 2 weeks from now, we'll see you again on behalf of LimeLite Audio and Media, as well as Cinch Oilfield Hauling. Mike LaBelle with you. Do us a favor, drink responsibly, drive safe, give your kids a hug. God bless. We'll see you in 2 weeks.